the University of Mississippi, and he will see how AI can help users analyze text in particular, and I'm very eager to listen to his presentation. Marc, you have the floor and you can share your screen.
Well, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate the opportunity. My name is Marc Watkins. I'm an academic innovation fellow from the University of Mississippi. I'm also the director of the AI Institute for Teachers. Both of those were just invented this last year for some really unknown reasons. I don't know why. Before that, I was a lecturer of composition and writing for about 13 years here at the University of Mississippi. We at the university had a little bit of a head start from everyone else by working with some earlier versions of OpenAI's GPT-3 way back in May of 2022. About that time period, OpenAI had opened up the API access so independent developers could actually start building some different types of apps with the actual interface. So about 6 months before ChatGPT was publicly released, we actually got together. We had our freak out moment because we could see what the technology was doing. And we wanted to start seeing how this technology could actually help students in our first year writing classes, our professional writing classes, our technical writing classes. So we went through that about 48 hours of really deep soul searching to see what was going on too before we came together in committees and started to develop some of these tools. A lot of people have been focusing on ChatGPT's ability to generate text, but that's just one use case and one interface. One of the things we've piloted that was very interesting and I think has some really good solid use cases, but also some potentially perilous ones as well, is using generative AI technology to analyze and read documents at scale and in mass. Just to kind of give you an understanding of what the sort of landscape looks like, Google has a tool that they just put out through Google Labs. It's called Notebook LM, and you can sign up for it through Google Labs. This is in the United States. I don't know if it's the same in the European Union, depending on what you guys have access to or not. But a user can upload up to 4 million words of their own writing to this interface and have Google's generative AI technology analyze, summarize, and synthesize that material for them. So that is just mind-blowing to me that that's there. It still hallucinates like any sort of AI app out there too, which is another thing we're talking about with students, but we are quickly moving beyond just normal text generation. So what I'm going to do is I will release a Google Doc of the resources that I have to chat. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everyone can access it over there. We'll see what we can do here. And you guys can look at this as just speaking notes and sort of follow along if you'd like. And I will go ahead and also share my screen, and I'll show you 2 of the different apps that we used within first year writing classes. I will share some student reflections about what those apps, those students reacted to it. And if I get too off track, I have my speaking notes up here in the document too, so you all can follow along. I know sometimes I don't always speak correctly and because I get a little bit nervous. And we are also in a situation where technology can kind of zoom in and out. But I'll go and share my screen. Okay, well, I hope everyone can see that. So
Yes,
this
we
is
can.
thank you so much. This is the document I just shared. And so what we're going to talk about today are 2 specific AI reading assistants that were built using OpenAI's API access, mostly in the fall of 2022. They've since been developed further and explored. Explain paper is one of them, which was launched there, and it was launched by 2 graduate students in San Francisco for $300. And one of them was a non-native English-speaking student who was struggling with reading massive amounts of computer data science text and wanted to use generative AI to actually help explore that. And we're going to kind of talk about what this looks like in practice. I'll go and show you what the tool is. It's linked here, and it's already opened up for me. And this is, I'll scroll down. This is a little bit better way to see it. I'll log in a second and upload a PDF and give you an example. But this is a live version of it that they have recorded here too of a user on Twitter using it. And what you do is upload a PDF to the system, and you can then select different phrases, sentences, even entire paragraphs, and have the generative AI system begin to summarize and provide explanations of what those terms mean or sentences or paragraphs mean in context of the paper. What is unique about this is that for explain paper, they've also developed a way to toggle those summaries for a user's reading level. So if you are a high school student and you're reading a complex college paper, it will actually translate the language down to, say, an eighth grade, I'm talking United States terms, an eighth grade reading level, or even a younger reading level than that. And like anything with generative AI, some of these use cases work really well. It's really difficult to hard to try to translate a scientific term, like in this case, they're talking about extensive supervision, down in a way that would be useful for a lower grade level, though. I'll go and log in and show you a live example here. And I think I've got 1 or 2 PDFs already uploaded. And yeah, this is one. And let me zoom in here. So this is one of the reading assignments that I had assigned for my first year writing class about technology and the influence of technology on culture, really getting them sort of a framework to start talking about generative AI. It is by Neil Postman, who was a futurist who died in the early 1990s. And this is the first chapter of his book, The Technology, the Surrender of Culture. I'm sorry, Technopoly, the Surrender of Culture to Technology. And I've assigned this before in the past in different contexts to students, but since it talks about terms that are unfamiliar to them, it uses Greek mythology as one way to kind of talk about technology. And the technology he's discussing within the actual article too is from 1992, which means it's not very engaging to students. But what was interesting is when I asked my students to use explain paper to help them explore the text, when they hit a pain point in their reading process, it was a very interesting experience. And I'll show you how it functions. In this case, I'll select a phrase, theism, skepticism, which I think most of us would have trouble understanding without reading the paper. As you can see now, it gives me the option to customize your explanation. You can be a high school level, a undergrad level, a graduate level, or even an expert. And also middle school, I'll just go to a high school level. I'll click explain. And so this is using the free version of GPT 3.5 Turbo. You can pay for a paid plan to upgrade to GPT-4. I don't do that. I don't have my students do that either, because I think the free version is enough for them to understand and explore it. And it gives you an example of the actual summary of what the term means. It also gives you actual real resources that students can then click on and explore as they'd like, going through this sort of process of reading the actual text. A student can also ask follow-up questions and get more responses through the actual system. And that's the sort of framework for these tools that were there and that we deploy. So I'll click back here for a second, and I'll kind of move around here a little bit too from my notes. One thing that I have highlighted here too from the student reflections, I've got quite a few of them. But the one use case I was really thinking about for my students is that I have quite a few of my first year writing students suffer from different types of learning disabilities, especially with reading comprehension. And that is one of the core things that I saw for some of my students reflecting on this, is that since students have struggled with reading comprehension and because of their learning disabilities, having a tool like this that can help them analyze a paper is very helpful. And the process of shortening down and reading it an understandable paragraph definitely helped them understand the main claims of each section of that reading. And that was really repeated throughout the actual course from students that obviously had some issues with reading comprehension skills. But what kind of concerned me here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here just a second so we can go back and see each other's faces here. What really concerned me here, though, is that everyone in class loved this tool. Not just students who were had issues with speaking in a non-native English-speaking students, not just students that had disabilities, but all students wanted to use this technology to essentially offload the process of reading. One student said to me during discussion, "I'm never going to have to read again. Thank you so much." And I said, whoa, no, 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 that's not the point of this. And it really is this kind of interesting conversation that began to evolve, which we have noticed with everything with generative AI, regardless of the use case. In this case, we're talking about reading. I think everyone freaked out about ChatGPT because of the writing aspect. Well, this can really be disruptive to close reading skills for students. And we have to start thinking a little bit more carefully about how we'd like to deploy these tools and be introduced to our students these tools in the actual classroom, and to set a framework. What I said to my students after the assignment was done and we were discussing, and they were all talking about how this was so wonderful, they never have to read ever again. I said to them, take a step back and sort of think about if you're hovering above everything. What happens if I, as your teacher, choose to use generative AI to just summarize your papers that you're submitting to me, that I never read them ever again? And their response was, you can't do that. That'd be cheating. And what I had to explain to them is like, well, who's going to enforce that? Who's going to do this? What happens if your boss uses this technology to look at your annual report that you file to, or some sort of performance report to, and not actually read this? So it got them to really think about and sort of understanding why close reading skills actually matter, and how this technology, which is, I mean, very fast. That's the big thing about this. It's so quick to just click on an app and then beginning to get a response, can really be disruptive to that actual learning. So we are thinking about ways that this could be obviously useful for our students, but what sort of pedagogical framework and guardrails we can put in place so that they use this both effectively and ethically, to not offload that whole process. I will also say, talking to faculty, and training them over the course of the past year, they have been very interested in academic integrity issues with generative AI. But then when I sort of flip the switch and say, well, what sort of ethical framework would you like to operate under for your own work, for your teaching, or for your own research? And they say, well, that doesn't matter to me. I need this help to actually go through this as quickly as I can. And there are a lot of applications out there right now that really very closely automate the literature review process. One of them is called Elicit, and it's from a company called Ought out of San Francisco. And it is a very well-designed app that completely automates a literature review of hundreds, if not thousands, of papers, providing automated summaries to you. And that could be very helpful if you don't have funding for a graduate student to help you with your research, or if you don't have time to help with your actual research. But for a literature review to function, in theory, someone is supposed to read it and actually synthesize the material before it. And now we have the option to offload that to a generative system that cannot really be audited. You can't really ask it how it actually came up with its response. So it seems to be like anything with generative AI, it's almost like an onion. You start peeling it back, and there's deeper and deeper layers that you go about how some portion of it could be really helpful to certain students in certain contexts or certain users. But then you start thinking about how, if this is what we call unguided AI adoption across the board, it could really lead to a de-skilling or unskilling of many students. And we don't want that in the US education. I imagine you probably don't want that in the European Union in terms of education either, too. So the pathway that we are choosing to go at this university, and we don't have a regional sort of organization. I hope you guys have that, but we don't have that. We just have sort of ad hoc universities going there. A pathway we've done is to talk about AI literacy and start a discourse with ourselves, for faculty, for staff, administration, and students as well, to talk about how they want to use this technology, and to use it openly and ethically to hopefully augment their learning process and not offload it. That has some concerns. I'll show you an example of how this technology is being marketed to US students. I don't know if this is true across the board, but we are seeing waves of these third-party apps being used on influencers on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, being really sold to our students in ways that would make me sort of cringe as a teacher, because it's all about using this to either commit academic dishonesty, or if it's not, blatantly using it to cheat to offload the process of learning as quickly as you can. So they have blocked TikTok here at the University of Mississippi. So I've had to download a TikTok video to show this to you. So fingers crossed, hopefully this works, but I will go ahead and share that. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. And I will play the video. So before I do, this is an ad for a reading assistant / research assistant. It automates the process of reading articles before a student actually has to write an actual research paper.
Hours to do research for a paper worth literally 10% of your grades. I have a hack for you. Using Unriddle, you can upload as many documents as you want, and the AI will summarize for you. You can also ask it questions, and it will answer based on your text. You can also simplify really complicated topics, and you can start writing your assignment directly next to your research. If you ever get stuck, you can use the ++ function to generate the next sentence or give you ideas on what to write about. Now you can spend more time writing and editing and less reading research.
Yes, there are hundreds of these influencers now in the United States doing different versions of these apps. Some of them are getting, a few views. Some of them are getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. So I think it's very important to understand from the student's perspective how this technology is being both marketed toward them and how they're coming in contact with them in the wild. When I was deploying these apps to my students in the spring semester of 2023, this was at the time where OpenAI was also starting to release more and more apps, and more companies were starting to buy that. And one thing that we saw was that Snapchat came out with the AI within Snapchat Plus, which is very popular here in the United States. And students came into the class and saying, look, is this the AI thing you're talking about too? It's now in Snapchat. So I think that is something that we want to be very conscious about and think about, and really just start a discourse with them to begin this actual discussion. So I know that's my actual version. Well, I should probably show you the secondary tool before we go to actual discussion. So let me show you the second one here. Okay, so showing the second one. So the first tool we talked about was explain paper, and that's here too. Again, you can upload a PDF and ask it to talk to your text, and you can toggle that reading level. The second one is SciSpace, which is a little bit different, and it does cost a little bit of money. You have a free version for students to try. Someone can upload a PDF to it, but you can also scan open access journal articles with it as well too. And I will go and click on SciSpace here. I have this already opened up, and it is an actual article. And I can do just what I did with explain paper, and I can highlight any portion of the text. And their feature here is called Copilot. And it can then go ahead and begin to explain the actual text itself. And you see I have here highlighted here from October, an example I was doing with my students still, and it gave the actual generated response here below. And they can ask follow-up questions to it as well. What is unique about SciSpace's feature, though, is that it is much more multilingual than explain paper. I can go up here and I can toggle the actual explanations to different languages that the generative AI technology would produce. So I think it is a little bit more robust in the ways that it can be used than explain paper. And it also is using a whole database of open access journal articles. Well, I know that probably freaks some people out, which is okay. It's all right to give people an understanding of it too. I think sometimes that can be a little bit healthy. But I'd like to be able to answer your questions that you have too, if you are thinking about different types of use cases for the technology beyond just text generation. And what do you think this could be used as a helpful version for your students, or something that could, in theory, imperil or de-skill them?
Thank you, Mark. A lot of food for thought here.
It is a lot of food for thought. And when I did this a few weeks ago, we had an institute for actual teachers, and we had about 60 people come together over 3 days. And I built some different activities for them to begin exploring this, and they were in person, and it was a synchronous event. One of the things I did do is you can create AI personas in a company called Poe.com from Quora. And each one of those personas I chose as a stakeholder in the conversation. So you have a teacher, you have a student, you have a writer whose works you are uploading, maybe without their consent, to these actual generative systems to read, and to then ask that actual persona to how they feel about the conversation. And that is part of one of the activities underneath the Google Doc too. If you would like to use it or to reuse it, it is under a Creative Commons license. With all the materials too, along with an assignment that I loaded for my students.
Mark, I hope you don't mind me jumping in. I'm kind of fascinated with the idea that your university is taking steps to prevent, TikTok and other social media that would perpetuate the use for students to use AI. But have you had discussions about not just saying, yes, here it is, our students are getting inundated, which is beyond our control to stop it. Reminds me of the credit cards decades ago. Remember that, to college students? Yeah. But has your department or community, the campus in general, thought of ways to kind of like integrate it or oppose it by showing students ways that it could be used in an ethical stance?
That's a great question. I should clarify, the governor of the state of Mississippi has made the unilateral judgment that TikTok is now shut off for the state of Mississippi, which is following along quite a few other conservative governors in the state. Students have responded by not going on the university Wi-Fi with their phones and just using their data plans to access TikTok. That's one thing. For the generative AI technology, we did not ban it. We thought for a while about banning it and discussed it quite a bit in faculty senates. Quite a few late night meetings where people were very, very upset, as you can imagine. I'm sure you all had similar experiences too. What we have done is try to integrate it in ways and in assignments that explore what we call critical AI literacy. So basic AI literacy is just how these tools function, use cases for it too, or when not to use it. I would describe critical AI literacy is to understand the ethics involved, the actual sort of process of this as a tool that could be pragmatically useful, but also something that could theoretically hurt your labor going forward if it is ever used against you. And so what we do is we build small activities where they can explore different types of tools in these different ways to think about that. And that's really what I've started here with our AI Institute, and we've got quite a few other faculty members doing it with different ways. One of the really neat things, I say it's a neat thing, it can be terrifying too. Everything's neat and terrifying at the same time with this technology. A company called Perplexity AI, which is a really great research assistant and how they have this design. They have open models that they have used and fine-tuned from Meta, which has released a lot of open models that are not proprietary models like ChatGPT or Bard from Google. And they released one open model called Perplexity 70B Chat. I believe that's what it's called, without any safety regards whatsoever. They wanted to be trained on no morality. There's no safety whatsoever. So you can ask it anything. And the sort of like tame thing I did was asking it how to rob a bank and giving me step-by-step instructions to get away with it. I use that as a teaching tool to show my students that when they interact with ChatGPT and they get these very sort of like milquetoast responses that are very safe, that's a very thin layer of human reinforcement learning that ChatGPT has actually been exposed to use Kenyan labor at $2 an hour to go through and program out the bias. Underneath these language models, it is, the entire toxic waste dump of the internet awaiting you. It can say anything or do anything. And showing students that this is available, not to them to use, but just to see that what's out there as a learning experience, I think is helpful in their sort of oh my gosh moments from that are very unique as well too.
Any other questions? Vanessa asked the question, do you think these kinds of AI generative models will change the way students are evaluated in the future, or will educational institutions just find new ways to detect AI writing?
I think it's going to change the way we look at assessments. I think from my perspective, since I teach writing as a process. I scaffold my assignments quite a bit too, and I meet with my students in between this, and I've really taken off a lot of the pressure to cheat, because what I'm grading them on are those actual process-based assignments leading up to a major work. And I'm not just saying, here's a week to write an essay and come see me if you have questions. That's not going to work going forward. I think that if we look at these types of assignments that we can build with our students that are really asking them to engage their creativity and their actual experience that they want to write about in this case, then that can be very helpful. I think AI detection, from what I understand of it, is probably a dead horse, so to speak. It's not working. It's not functioning reliably. Vanderbilt University here turned it off. University of Pittsburgh, Texas A&M, SMU, they all turned off AI detection because of far too many false positives. And we just simply don't have the staff to actually go through the individual cases. And we've not been able to train faculty fast enough to actually deal with false AI detection reports too. I think the really great leader in this to think about is Sarah Elaine Eaton, who teaches at the University of Calgary. And she is an endowed, I think she's at several endowed chairs in academic integrity. And what she has said is that we need to start thinking about new ways of both assessing student writing and also thinking about how this impacts academic integrity, because this new version of text generation, at least, really does transcend traditional academic dishonesty. We need to start to think about new language to describe that.
Thank you so much.
CAM has CCAM. It's not only about past exams. The impact on industry work is going to be critical. We need to get prepared. Absolutely. In fact, I think the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, just had a report out too, saying that almost 35% of jobs, white collar, college educated jobs, are exposed and could be impacted to generative AI. And that is something to really be thoughtful about and think about that too. It's not necessarily going to happen, but it means that it is exposed, and if people aren't aware of the technology and what it can do, it could very much so risk their labor and their employment.
Okay, we just had a talk from Sarah. Sarah, are you still here? Sarah China? No. Could you answer to Marc about what you said about the opportunities of AI?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. I didn't hear the former.
Sorry. You just said in your presentation what were the opportunities offered by AI. To answer to Marc.
Well, I think that we are at a point where we're not changing everything about how we conceptualize jobs or processes and everything. We're at a point where we're just learning new tools. And for example, in the case of technical communicators, during the chat we had in a private room with a small group of attendants, we talked about the fact that maybe if I use generative AI, it's not really me because it's content produced by a machine. But I think that we're simply switching some steps of the job journey, our journey, our daily work journey. And for example, right now, for a technical writer, if we use AI, we won't probably focus entirely on writing and interviews, for example, we'll also use AI tools to make more research, to learn more technicalities about where we're documenting, and probably we're optimizing what we're doing by using the tool. So this doesn't mean that we're not doing the job. This means that we are just adding a new tool and as I said before, switching the faces of the process. So I think this is just this is an opportunity because we're growing in terms of competencies, because a few years back technical writers were just writing, and now they use tools that come from agile environments, and at some point in history this was pretty cool, new and unexpected, but we learned to do that. And probably this is time where we add this potential to our competencies. I don't know if this is an answer, but that's how I see it.
Well, I really do appreciate that. I think it's a really good perspective too. And I think that I am of two minds. One of that is that mind to say that this is a tool that everyone's going to need to know how to use and use it pragmatically to help them, especially for our students when they go into the industry. And I think that that is something we are all capable of doing and putting ethical guardrails on for our students to learn, and how to use this too to just sort of shift competencies. So that's one mind. The other mind that kind of scares me is that now with multimodal AI, this is the sort of thing that is coming out that does both vision, video, and also voice, is that it is possible to scan your entire image and create an avatar of yourself that still has many what we call uncanny valley moments where you sort of take it aback and this looks really weird and really wrong. But the implication of having a digital self, of using yourself to then have what they call real-time streaming behind it using an AI persona, could, in theory, destabilize what it means to teach in some cases. Now, I had that to my institute. I told my teachers, I said, would you ever consent to have yourself scanned to a system too and have this do your job? They said, well, no, of course not. That's terrible. It's gross. Get out of here. But then when I rephrased that, I said, okay, well, what if the university offered you 1 semester sabbatical leave in exchange for licensing your actual avatar for yourself too, so that it could teach your classes for you? What would you then say? And then they threw something even heavier at me at that point in time. Because this is just getting to the point where if it just stays as tools, I agree with you. It's going to be something that we can use that will help people. It'll be a new competency. It just seems like the technology is accelerating to the point where they're not just going to be satisfied with that tool paradigm, and they want to have this out there as a system that can either be a agent, as they call it too, or something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I also think, and that I appreciated in your presentation, is that probably it's just about it's about focusing on the process of working, of learning, and of course, young students will be thrilled to create a long essay with a machine. Okay, that is fun. For the first part of the job, it's super fun. But this, as I said in my presentation, this is a technological revolution, yes. And at every revolution, we've been scared. We've thought that this is the end of the world and everything will change. But if, for example, at university, I'm super grateful because I was taught my working ethic and how to behave at work, how to use tools, how to communicate with my with the other members of the team. Well, if we integrate if we start integrating this principle of using AI ethically, of using AI as a tool and not for cheating, I think we'll shape new minds to the usage of this tool. And I don't see it as a danger. I don't see it forcefully as a danger if we give it the right space. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it, because if a student understands how to use it the right way, of course, the first time they will use it to cheat, because we're human beings. It will happen. But eventually, if they care about what they're learning, their journey, if they care about their profile as a professional human being interacting with other people, I think it might become natural for them to focus on using it the right way.
Thank
I
you
think
very
that's
much.
very good.
We have a lot of students here on the floor, and I would just advise the students not to use ChatGPT when they will be hired by the company, asking for a test, for example, because the company will surely know if you use ChatGPT or not. So please don't do it, because it will be very obvious. So this was just a little advice for you. Thank you very much, Marc. It was really very interesting. You have been recorded, unless you don't want to.
That's okay.
Okay, so this will be posted on our site, our research site, and we will let you know where. And now, thank you very much, Marc, for getting up very early. And now